Described as being a hand-drawn psychological horror game inspired by folk tales, Mundaun immediately tickled my fancy. Developed by Hidden Fields, this game is basically like playing a film, so I'll focus more on the story rather than the gameplay elements. Therefore, be warned, there are minor spoilers ahead. I won't be discussing details of the ending though, just my overall opinion. The game opens on a bus winding its way up narrow roads on the Swiss Alps as our protagonist, Kerdin, makes his way to his grandfather's home of Mundaun, where he often visited as a child. He reads a letter from Father Jeremias who tells him that his grandfather, Florin, has sadly perished in a fire in his barn and has already been buried. The letter advised Kerdin not to come back to Mundaun, but something about this letter feels off, which prompts him to return anyway. As we arrive in Mundaun, Kerdin begins to investigate the mysterious circumstances of his grandfather's death. Whilst investigating the burnt-out barn where he died, he comes across a mysterious painting of the fire that he somehow enters into like a portal, which takes him to the night of the barn fire. There he meets a sinister stranger who, quite literally, leaves his mark on Kerdin. In addition, he also discovers the windows boarded up and his grandfather's charred remains, contrary to what Father Jeremias' letter said. Confusing yet intriguing, no? The story is linear and focused. It centres on uncovering the truth behind Florin's death and the roleplay by the old man with the creepy face. Although described as being a horror game, it feels more of an adventure game. You spend a lot of time exploring and completing objectives with your trusty companions of a mute little girl and a severed goat's head. There's puzzles along the way too, which don't really pose too much of a challenge. That suited me just fine, as generally it takes me way too long to solve puzzles, despite my love of them. Things just keep on getting weirder and more intriguing the further you delve into the world. Each area of Mundaun comes with its own unique foes, including beekeepers and men made out of straw. The survival horror technique of avoiding them seems to be the best, but as you progress through the game you do get access to more weapons. There is also a nod to the Amnesia games, where Kerdin will become increasingly distressed and almost paralysed with fear if he gets too close to an enemy. Although linear in its storytelling, each area does allow for some exploration, like a scaled down open world game. This does indeed very much feel like a folktale and is inspired by the story of the devil appearing at a moment of great need and offering a deal, and provides a cautionary tale of the consequences of accepting such a deal. As we approach the conclusion of the tale, Kerdin discovers that his father has made some kind of a pact with the old man, or devil if you will, during a war, allowing him and his men to survive insurmountable odds. This comes at a high price though, and in return they're expected to give him an unbaptised soul in exchange. Florin attempts to con the old man, which ultimately led to his demise some years later. The consequences of his choice ripple forward through time, posing the question of whether short-term gains are worth it for the long-term consequences. There's also this painter woven into the story somehow, who seems to have his own pact with the old man. He plays a relatively minor part of the story, but an important one nonetheless, particularly when considering the consequences of the choices we make. Which leads me nicely to the point that Mundaun has multiple endings. There are a couple of different choices throughout the game that you're presented with, which will affect the ultimate ending. So you really can explore the consequences of your choices and ask yourself if just because you can change the past, should you? Fortunately, Mundaun does not rely on the horror game trope of jump scares here, there and everywhere. There are jump scares, but they're few and far between, which gives them much more of an impact. Like so.
So I'm just going to skip. Oh my god.
Instead, this game opts for an overall unnerving atmosphere which is heightened by the hand-drawn style. Those faces are pretty creepy, am I right? This hand-drawn monochrome style does take a bit of getting used to, and sometimes the textures do seem to blend into one another. But with that being said, this game has an eerie beauty to it. The detail in Father Jeremias' chapel really showcases the hand-drawn style used. It is simply mesmerising. I did find that after a long session playing this game though, as soon as I stopped and took in my own surroundings, the world just seemed so bright and colourful. I can't say that I've ever really experienced this feeling before, and it just goes to show just how much Mundaun really does absorb you into its world. Upon hearing that this is a psychological horror game, I was expecting some kind of twist similar to Cry of Fear. Mundaun does need to be taken at face value though, and in retrospect I do think I got a bit too caught up in overanalyzing potential hidden meanings, rather than just enjoying the game for what it is. So if you do play this game, I recommend you just accept everything at face value, not to overthink it, and just enjoy it for what it is. The pace of the game feels deliberately slow too, with long sections of just pure dialogue. This feels like a story that's meant to be absorbed slowly, with attention paid to the meticulous design and storytelling. That being said though, the game can be played in about 8 hours and feels more like you're watching a long film unfolding. A unique concept that doesn't disappoint, Mundaun is clearly a labour of love, with each element of the game being meticulously hand-drawn to create a mesmerising and unnerving experience. I would recommend this game to people who enjoy a good story and are happy to just take their time absorbing it. This isn't really one for people who enjoy a more action-orientated or jump scare style of game. Thank you very much for watching. If you've played this game or watched my playthrough of it, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. I'm intrigued to hear other opinions. If you've also managed to make it this far, please do consider subscribing. Thank you very much.